What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Waters and welcome to The Life to Metal. It's time for another edition of What's Spinning, and in this edition of What's Spinning, rather than showing you just some stuff I've been playing lately, I'm going to actually do Farley's contest video. Farley does vinyl community videos like I do, but he also does a lot of vinyl rips to video, which makes his channel a little different than mine. Plays songs, full albums, vinyl ripping, and then putting them on YouTube to listen to. So check out Farley's channel. But the question was, if the big four were the big five, who would you add to the big five? Of course, the big four being Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, Metallica. You know, all four of these bands I love. I got into Anthrax, Slayer, and Metallica very early on. I bought this album as a new release, this one as a new release, this one as a new release. Megadeth I got into a few years later, but still, I mean, I love all those bands. To this day, Anthrax is still one of my top favorite bands. So, yeah, who would you add? All right, so I kind of struggled with this question because, I mean, my initial reaction would be Overkill. Overkill are absolutely one of my all-time favorite bands. I love them as much as any of these bands you see behind me over here, and they were one of the earliest bands to sign to a major label. They kind of remained true to thrash through their whole career. They never broke up, you know. So they have all the qualities that these bands have, and even better, in my opinion. Overkill remained thrash, or at least metal. They never went, you know, hardcore or went for the alternative sound or, you know, any of that kind of stuff. They were always that pure thrash where they mixed the punk fury with the heavy metal attitude, combining what is called thrash metal. So Overkill would have been my first choice, but that's more because I like them than anything else. So I'm not sure that Overkill deserves it. I think you can make a good argument for it. Formed in 1980, that, you know, they were formed pretty early on. Actually, before a few of these bands. I mean, Megadeth was formed much later in 1980. So, yeah, I think Overkill is a good choice. Another choice, I think a good choice might be Testament. But Testament wasn't formed until '83. They were kind of formed right around the time when thrash metal was rising, and they became popular. This came out in '85, I think, '87. So I mean, you know, they were a little late for the new wave of British heavy metal. A little late for the big four or big five as we're talking about it. But I think that, again, this is a band who kind of stayed true to the roots. You know, they went outside a little bit, pushing toward death metal and this kind of things. But they always stayed metal, and they're still around. They're still releasing great music. You know, this is one of their more recent albums, and I think this is a great album. So they're another band I think you can make a persuasive argument for being included in the big five. So that's one of the other bands I thought about, but I don't know. It's another band I think definitely deserves to be in there, and I won't even necessarily call these guys a thrash band, but they were hugely influential, especially early on, to thrash metal. I mean, Metal Church. These guys are, again, formed in 1980, and releasing demos. I mean, I think yeah, their Four Hymns demo was hugely traded in 1983, and then the Metal Church album, which came out on a major label, was released in 1984. So, you know, they have the right time frame, they have the right sound, they have the speed, they have the aggression, they have the influence. So I honestly think Metal Church, you could make a really good persuasive argument for them to be included as the big five as well. For whatever reason, these guys kind of veered off away from the more thrashy stuff like they did on here and the dark, and went more towards what most people call US power metal, thinking man's metal, whatever you want to call it. Regardless, again, I think this is a band that could be included, and you make a fairly persuasive argument. I also think I could make a persuasive argument for Dark Angel, another California metal band. Dark Angel were formed 1981. 1981. So again, right around that same time frame as some of these bands. You know, they were from that had the same sound, even heavier, more along the lines of Slayer. This being their second album. They were releasing demos. 1983 they had the Into the Inferno demo from Shell Shock, and actually I have a vinyl of that. The Shell Shock demos, and then they had the 1984 Hell on Its Knees demos. These guys were hugely influential as well, especially going into the death metal sound and even black metal sound. Even today, Dark Angel hugely influential. So again, I think you can make a persuasive argument for Dark Angel being included. The problem with them is they didn't really, start swinging it until 1985. I think their first album was released, which actually is the same time Megadeth's album was released. So I don't know. Again, Dark Angel, another one I think you can make a persuasive argument for. I love Dark Angel, especially the Ron Reinhardt albums. So one more that I considered and isn't going to be my final choice, but Death Angel. Another one formed in the early 80s. Death Angel was formed in, I wrote it down, 1982. And, very influential band, California, ended up being on Enigma Records. They have all the same qualities. U.S. thrash metal, sold lots of records, toured all over the world. A lot of the same qualities as the Big Four. They kind of veered off. In 1991, they broke up and they formed a band called The Organization, which was a mixture of funk and alternative and metal, and there's just a little bit of everything. So, I don't know, they kind of veered and then came back together, and they've been releasing great stuff ever since as well. So, again, another one I think you can make a persuasive argument for. But this is the band I think honestly deserves to be in the Big Five. I think they deserve it as much as any of these four bands, if not more so than some of them. But Exodus, Bonded by Blood. This is going to be one of the most influential thrash metal albums of all time, ranking up there with Kill 'Em All and, Show No Mercy and just all those influential Big Four thrash albums early on. All three of them, their first 3 albums or 4 albums were hugely influential. And this album here, to this day, you've got a new wave of thrash metal who is basically copying this sound. You even got a band called Bonded by Blood out of California, who's, their sound comes from this album right here. The problem with Exodus was this album was recorded in '84. They were around since 1979, which is way before these guys were formed. And when this was recorded, they had some label problems, legal problems, whatever. This didn't get released until later in 1985, was like mid to late '85. So I think these guys lost momentum because of that. Had this been released a year earlier, I honestly think these guys would have been huge, as huge as any of these bands were, because then they went on to record great albums like Pleasure of the Flesh, and I love this album. This was originally with Paul Bailoff. He was the original vocalist. Enter Steve Zosa, who was formerly with Legacy or Testament, and I just think they got better. There's not a song on here I don't like. I even love the let's see here. I don't see the song listing on the back. Oh, there it is. Parasite, Brain Dead. This is Pleasure of the Flesh, Seeds of Hate, Chemical. It's just a classic album, arranged. I think this album is just as good as, if not better, than the first album. And then you've got, here's the picture disc with the original artwork of that same album. And then your third album, Fabulous Disaster, which has a song, Toxic Waltz, which was just, played constantly on MTV back in the day. Should have been a huge hit for him. It's just a great song. I don't know. Exodus were one of the pioneers. You had Kirk Hammett, who actually came out of Exodus, went into Metallica. Definitely deserving of that Big Five status. They're not my favorite of the bunch I just showed. Like I said, I would personally, I'd probably pick Dark Angel or Overkill, 2 bands I like a little bit better than Exodus. But I think Exodus are the most deserving band of any of these thrash bands coming out of the United States at that time. Like I said, influence. The one thing they lack is the sales. They just don't have the sales of these bands. And perhaps it was also the fact that they changed vocalists after the first album. I don't know. So did Anthrax. And they managed to get bigger. So why that did happen for Exodus, I don't know. They were on Combat, which was a small label, but it's the same label that Megadeth started out on. So there's just no reason that this band didn't get the recognition that they deserved. Anyhow, so that's my choice. Exodus for the 5th band in the big 5 of thrash metal. A very deserving band, one of the most influential bands, and that is it. Hope you enjoyed this edition of What's Spinning. If you agree with me, disagree with me, think some of the other bands should have been included, think I left somebody out that you think should have been included, let me know below. I appreciate you all watching. I appreciate you all commenting. Happy New Year 2017. God bless and stay strong.